Today we'll be looking at the RG353PS, yet another handheld from Anbernic. Anbernic seem to be trying to cover off every single corner of the retro gaming handheld market, and the RG353PS, the successor to the RG353P, competes with the likes of the Pocket Go S30 and the Datafrog SF2000 in terms of ergonomic design, whereas the SF2000 and the Pocket Go S30 are nowhere near the capabilities of the RG353PS in terms of emulation power. The visual similarities cannot be missed, all taking style cues from the legendary SNES controllers. The RG353PS differs though in the fact that it is bigger than both the SF2000 and the S30 in terms of size, making potentially the most ergonomic retro handheld with a 3.5-inch screen that I've ever used. Now, we're all familiar with the squared off style that Anbernic usually goes for the retro gaming handhelds, but they have been known to try a few different things. And honestly, I tend to like it when Anbernic tries something a bit different, because as much as the squared off look is very symbolic of Anbernic and it looks pretty cool, some of their other design styles have definitely felt more comfortable in the hands, and the RG353PS is one of those consoles. It feels very comfortable to use thanks to the rounded sides. As we said, the RG353PS looks like a SNES controller, but because it's bigger, it fits really well in your hands. So anybody who's comfortable using a SNES controller or likes their retro gaming with a controller like that and has bigger hands will be really at home here. Furthermore, D-pad, face buttons and analog sticks are in really comfortable to reach places, meaning that your thumbs aren't stretching too much or cramping up too much to get that perfect position. And with the rounded edges, it means that your hands curve over perfectly to reach the shoulder buttons as well. Shoulder buttons which again differ from the standard Anbernic approach, as these are staggered and not in series. Now unfortunately, R2 and L2 are not analog buttons, which would have been lovely to see on this console. But considering the RG353PS is not an Android device, it means you won't be as limited as much as you are in some other Anbernic consoles, which are Android devices, but don't give you the full benefits of Android gaming or game streaming because they don't have analog shoulder buttons. The 353PS is a Linux device and emulates brilliantly up to the Dreamcast generation. However, being a Linux device does bring about some issues for me, which we will address in a bit. Also, the limited power does mean that PSP gaming does struggle a bit. Carrying on with the physical design of the RG353PS, and on the top we have two USB 3 ports, a mini HDMI out, a reset button and volume. On the bottom we have two SD card slots, one for the operating system and one for extra games, as well as an audio jack and accompanying speakers. And the rest of the buttons like start, select, function and power can be found on the face, which is a little bit unusual for an Anbernic device, but it helps stop you from accidentally hitting them if they're on the sides. Furthermore, the RG353PS comes with a 3.5-inch 640 by 480 screen, and something I actually really like about this screen is that it doesn't have the Anbernic logo at the bottom. I don't usually mind those, but the reason why I like that it's not here is because it has the same dot matrix with stereo sound that we saw on the original Game Boy. A really nice nostalgic head nod to the forefather of these retro gaming handhelds. As we've come to expect with Anbernic devices, the screen is a lovely IPS screen, which gives you a great experience when playing your favourite retro games. Now, the RG353PS is the smaller brother to the RG353P. They're basically the same size, same shell, same everything, apart from the fact that the 353P is an Android device with a little bit more RAM. The 353PS is a more streamlined version inside, meaning that it only supports Linux and has 1GB of RAM, but that's all it needs to support the games that this can emulate. In some respects, the RG353P is a little bit overkill and didn't really need Android. And with having Android on a device like that, you'll inevitably be tempted to try GameCube games and PlayStation 2 games as well, which it would struggle with. With a 353PS, you can get it cheaper and it is a much more focused experience. As we said, emulation is supported all the way up to the Dreamcast generation, and this is what I'm really starting to enjoy seeing with different variant types of retro gaming handhelds that come out. I'm really starting to like seeing them focus on the consoles and up to the generation that they can genuinely support. Now that we have so many different options, there's no longer really a need to try and squeeze out as much as we can from some of these smaller devices. There's enough variety in the market that if somebody wants something that can play GameCube and PS2, they can pay the extra money and get that. But if somebody just wants a great handheld experience that gets up to Dreamcast and gives you a really good portable experience, then consoles like the RG353PS are a brilliant choice. And as we said earlier, it's massively nostalgic with the design of the console and really ergonomic to use. If you do want some more focused details of the hardware, then you can check out the Anbernic site, but I'll also pop them up on the screen right now. And as always, if you're buying an Anbernic console, there's a very good chance you're going to get an SD card absolutely packed full of games. And with this being a Linux handheld, it puts it right up there with the easiest best user experiences you can get on retro gaming handhelds. Select an emulator and select a game, and then you're ready to go. And if you want to add more games, you just copy them onto an SD card into the relevant folder, and the Linux OS will know where it is and present it for you right under your emulator, ready for you to play. But as much as I love the user friendliness of the Linux experience, this is where I have a little bit of an issue. And I think I've started to get spoiled a little bit with the recent amount of Android handhelds. The one issue I have with the RG353PS is that it can be sometimes a little bit finicky when using buttons like the function button or the power button. It doesn't always feel like the operating system recognizes those presses. But if you're a savvy retro handheld gamer, then adding a custom OS won't be an issue at all. And beyond those small issues, the user friendliness of the user interface outweighs the experience. But most importantly, how pocketable is this device? At the end of the day, it wears the badge of honor with a similar screen to the original DMG Game Boy, which actually, when we think about it, was nowhere near as pocketable as a lot of these devices we're getting now. But Anbernic have done an absolutely superb job of keeping the RG353PS very, very pocketable, even though it has staggered shoulder buttons. The R2 and L2 only fractionally creep out over the edge, and the analog sticks follow the same design style that we see in a lot of Anbernic consoles, where they sit in a nice recessed dip with enough movement so you don't bump the edges, but means that the analog sticks barely protrude out of the console, making this an incredibly flush and very pocketable handheld. Now, the RG353PS goes up against a lot of strong competition, even within its own Anbernic family. And honestly, it's really starting to get difficult to pick which is the best Anbernic handheld console, especially under $100. But with its curved edges and massively ergonomic feel, along with a fantastic gameplay experience, the RG353PS is right up there. And the only thing that I would do to improve this is potentially bring out one with a metallic shell. If you want to get your hands on one, links will be in the description below. But if you do want to look at some metallic counterparts, check out this right here.